My sister warns me she's pregnant by my husband and that divorce papers are coming, but I love being the bearer of bad news for her. I'll start by saying my younger sister had an affair with my husband. My younger sister, the one I took care of and called mine from a young age, has spread herself open for my husband, if you know what I mean. And the man who was supposed to have sworn to love me for life at our wedding, chose something else to love now, I guess. These are two of the people I thought I could always count on to have my back, people I didn't have to worry about betraying me. But there you have it. Though the worst is yet to come. Turns out, not only did they sleep together, but my sister is now pregnant with his child. So not only did a bucket of cold water fall on me, that bucket also had lobsters with very sharp pincers. And it was cold water, because there were no obvious signs, no suspicious behavior, nothing that made me question that something was going on behind my back. I trusted them, which, in hindsight, seems like a pretty dumb thing to do. And if you think that everything I've recently found out is bad, the reveal makes it even worse. It all came about from my sister's visit. She doesn't live in the same city as me and our parents. She moved away when she was still married to her ex. A few years ago, her relationship with her husband fell apart because, at the time, she was struggling to get pregnant. Her inability to conceive was one of the main reasons why their marriage ended. Both my sister and her ex-husband underwent multiple medical tests to figure out why they couldn't conceive. But no exact cause of the problem was ever identified. There wasn't a clear medical reason stopping them from having a child. Doctors reassured them that sometimes these things take time and they should try to be patient. That the stress of trying and failing could be having that effect as well. But patience has never been my sister's virtue. She constantly pressured her ex, insisting they do everything possible to have a baby. When they couldn't conceive naturally, she turned to IVF, determined to make it happen no matter the cost. She underwent 2 rounds of IVF, each more stressful and draining than the last, but both attempts ended in disappointment. This took a heavy emotional and financial toll on both her and her ex-husband. They poured a lot of money into the treatments, money they could barely afford, hoping that finally this would be the solution. At the time, I felt nothing but sympathy for her. She wanted to be a mother so badly, and it pained me to see her struggle. I even gave her $1,000 as a gift, wanting to support her in any way I could. I didn't have much to give, but I wanted to help her fulfill her dream of having a child. When IVF failed, my sister turned to adoption. But this was when her ex-husband finally put his foot down. He had supported her through the fertility treatments, the doctor visits, and the heartache of the IVF failures. But adoption was a step he just wasn't comfortable with. He wasn't against children, but he didn't feel ready or willing to take on the responsibility of raising an adopted child. My sister, however, isn't the type of person to take no for an answer. She kept pushing him, telling him that even if he wasn't on board, he should go through with the adoption for her sake. She made it clear this was something she wanted more than anything. And in her mind, his feelings on the matter weren't as important as her dream of becoming a mother. My parents and I tried to reason with her too. We reminded her that adoption is a huge decision, one that both parents need to be fully committed to. We warned her that if he wasn't comfortable with it now, he likely never would be, and that would only lead to more problems down the road. But she wouldn't listen. Eventually, she went ahead and adopted a toddler. She was overjoyed, acting like it had all been worth it. But, true to his word, her ex-husband remained distant. He'd already told her he didn't want this, and he followed through. He refused to step into the role of a father and wanted no involvement in the child's life whatsoever. As a result, their already fragile marriage began to completely fall apart. The stress, the disagreements, and the resentment that had been building up between them finally became too much to bear. With her ex-husband refusing to take responsibility for the adopted child, my sister tried to do it all on her own, but she was failing. Between her part-time job and trying to care for her son, she was completely exhausted. She didn't have money to hire a babysitter, and since her ex had made it clear he wanted nothing to do with the child, he refused to contribute financially. Also, the judge had only granted the adoption to my sister. My sister had no choice but to figure things out on her own. And in her desperation, she made a terrible decision. She began leaving the toddler home alone for hours while she went to work. She would leave him food, turn on the TV, and hope he would be okay until she got back. During one of the mandatory visits, the authorities found out what she'd been doing. The moment they learned that she'd been regularly leaving the child alone, they acted swiftly, just 4 months after she'd adopted him. The child was removed from her care as it was deemed dangerous and neglectful. I know she tried to fight to get him back, probably hoping they would give him back, but her case wasn't strong. Even the child himself didn't want to stay with her and her ex because of their constant fights. This plunged my sister further into depression. Up until that point, she'd been struggling to cope with the pressures of motherhood, but at least she had something to hold onto. Now, even that was gone. In the end, her ex walked away for good as she couldn't stop blaming him for everything. Since the divorce, she's remained mostly single. She never seemed to have any serious relationships, at least none that she talked about. Over the years, I've done my best to be there for her. No matter what she had done or how many times she'd messed up, I helped her in any way I could, financially, emotionally, and any other way she needed. I would send her money when she was struggling, make sure to have weekly video calls with her to check in, and visit her whenever I got the chance. That's why this betrayal hurts so much. I thought our relationship was solid and that she would never hurt me in such a horrible way. But all this time, while I was calling her, worrying about her, and offering my support, she was sneaking around with my husband. Lying to my face, pretending to be my loving sister, while carrying on an affair with the man I married. I never imagined she would be sleeping with my husband behind my back so brazenly and lying to me about it. When my sister told me she was coming to visit this week, I was thrilled because I wanted to see her. It was rare for her to come and see me. She didn't like to visit our hometown because she preferred avoiding our parents. So most of the time, I was the one making the effort to go see her. I told my husband about her visit, expecting him to be excited as well since he hadn't seen her in a while, but he looked apprehensive. His entire demeanor changed and asked me why she was coming. He even asked if I could get her to postpone her visit. This should have been my first red flag. I thought he was busy with work stuff and didn't want someone over. But I told him I would take care of her and that he wouldn't have to do anything. Which is ironic because he was doing a lot with her. He didn't press it after that. Then, on the day of my sister's visit, my husband suddenly announced he would be out all day. He told me he decided to go golfing with his buddies and wouldn't be back until late that night. My husband did golf, but it was always on the weekends, never in the middle of the week. I asked him about it, since when do you golf on a Wednesday? He said it was no big deal, just needed a break, not a biggie. The moment I saw her standing there, I immediately hugged her affectionately. I was genuinely excited to see her, so I didn't notice anything off at first. It wasn't until I pulled away that I saw her expression. It was when my gaze drifted downwards and for the first time, I saw it. Her hands were resting on her stomach. My sister seemed to have a slight baby bump. I should have congratulated her or hugged her again, but she told me, I'm almost 3 months along. I was so happy for her. That's what sisters do when they care, not sleep with your husband. I said, oh my God, that's amazing, you're finally pregnant. I invited her inside and helped her get settled. I remember thinking it was the best news ever. If I only knew back then. My sister, however, didn't seem as excited as I was. She had this weird expression and kept avoiding eye contact, like she was looking for something, or someone. She seemed nervous when she asked me where my husband was. I was taken aback. Oh, he's out golfing with his friends. I don't know what's gotten into him, he never goes in the middle of the week to play. She shook her head like she didn't believe it and asked, really? In my excitement, I didn't even process the tone or the strange way she'd said it. I brushed past it and bombarded her with questions. Oh my God, tell me everything. How did you get pregnant? Do you know who the father is? Do you have a boyfriend? Or was it you went and had IVF in secret? I looked at her expectantly, waiting for her to finally share the details, but now looking back I wouldn't have wanted to know the details. She was very nervous, like thinking until the last moment whether she would tell me or not. So she said, I need to tell you something, but please don't overreact. I said okay, although something inside me told me I might not like what I was about to hear. And then she dropped the bomb. I've been having an affair with a married man for the past year. She admitted she'd been involved with a married man for that entire time. What started as a casual fling, intended to be nothing more than an uncomplicated hookup, had unexpectedly evolved into something deeper as they both developed real feelings for one another. I couldn't believe my sister had been sleeping with a married man. Needless to say, I found it awful. And I found it awful before I knew who this married man was. It just felt so wrong. My heart went out to his wife, who had no clue what was going on. Who is this guy? I knew him, and why has she been keeping this from me for so long? We talked all the time, I thought we were close. Why had she kept this secret from me? I looked her straight in the eyes and asked, who is he? I was curious. Is he a neighbor, the husband of a friend? She didn't answer, just stood there, silent, staring at me. I asked again, because if she wouldn't speak then I must have known him. It's surreal to think now how I thought at that moment, and what it is now. Never in a million years would I have guessed my sister, who lives in another city, was having an affair with my husband. Now it seems obvious, because you know from the title and because I already said it. But unless I have a severe case of paranoia, you're not thinking these things. But this was when she finally answered, it's your husband, he's the father of my baby. I told her to stop joking around and tell me what was going on. It couldn't make any sense. My sister, my own idiot sister, had been sleeping with my husband. I kept staring at her, waiting and praying for her to say it was some kind of cruel joke, for her to laugh and tell me it was a lie, that she just wanted to mess with me to warm up. But every second that ticked by and her face remained unchanged, I began to realize that it wasn't a joke, that my sister really was sleeping with my jerk husband, and that the two of them were expecting a baby. I glanced down at her belly and then back up at her face as my sister finally broke the silence, saying that she never expected my husband to be the one to get her pregnant, especially after she'd lost all hope when her ex left her. She admitted that yes, she knew she'd done wrong, but if God had given her a baby with then this was one of those meant to be things. I asked her what she thought God's plan was for me. She told me to accept this miracle and step aside so that she can stop suffering. I could seriously see her also, and I told her that was not what I asked. I don't think God had that plan for me. God isn't stupid, and he didn't expect me to sit here and take this. I told her I was asking about God's plan to kick her ass, if God had a blunt object ready for it or expected me to do it with my bare hands. I also said the plan might be not physically harm her just because she's pregnant, but unless this was a joke that was getting too far and that she should give it now, then she should leave before I apply my own plan. She just sighed and told me it would take time for me to process all of this, but eventually, I'd accept how beautiful this situation was. She reminded me how desperate and depressed she'd been for years to have a child and said that out of all the men she could have found, it was my man who finally gave her what she wanted. That it was a special situation, which could justify infidelity. I think her plan today was to come to my house and get beat up, because all her efforts were focused on that. I spat, did you not take your folic acid today or have your neurons gone on vacation abroad? You slept with my husband, got pregnant, and you think I'm going to be okay with this? No, you want me to beat your head in. I demanded to know how it all started, as I still didn't want to believe this was real. She confessed that it all began a year ago, when my husband traveled to her city for a business trip. She explained that they went out for dinner that night because he was alone there and she wanted to be a good sister-in-law. She took that to heart, because she was so good that she even offered her eggs to welcome his sperm as well. She went on to say that they had a little too much to drink that night, and as things often do, one thing led to another. They ended up back at her place, where they crossed a line they should never have crossed. After that first night, they both told themselves it was a mistake, something that should never have happened. The guilt, according to her, had weighed heavily on them, and they promised it would never happen again. But over time, they ended up sleeping together again, and again. Over the months, they continued seeing each other and having encounters. They even started going out on formal dates. My sister told me that she and my husband simply connected on a deeper level, and that he felt like home to her. My sister then told me that although she felt a little guilty, She never imagined that something so positive like her pregnancy would come out of the affair. She admitted she knew how the family would react once the truth came out, but she remained confident that my husband would support her and protect both her and the baby, and that that's all that mattered. Without hesitation, she informed me that he'd be serving me divorce papers very soon so they could start their new life together, with her and their baby. I couldn't stand looking at her anymore. I told her to leave because if she stayed a minute longer, I was going to ruin her life over some pregnant bullshit. She tried to argue, insisting that she'd specifically come to see me and to work things out with my husband, so they could leave together. That she only did it so that all of this wouldn't have to end horribly, but civilly. I can stay, talk, explain. But I started getting up and walking toward her, while she walked backward, toward the door. But then, when she was a little safer outside, though I think I could easily reach her and make her eat lawn grass in a few meters, instead of showing remorse, she scoffed at me and called me a psycho before storming off. Now she's staying at a motel, because her plan, which I found out later, of staying at my house with my husband failed. I still haven't heard from my husband. Before continuing, don't forget to subscribe. New stories every day. Update 1. It's only been a few hours since I posted this. My cowardly husband hasn't come home, nor is he answering his phone. I'm guessing that's no coincidence. He must know exactly why my sister was coming, which is probably why he made an excuse to be out all day. But that's okay, let him take his time. I have all the patience in the world to wait for him to walk through that door, because when he does, he's going to face every ounce of the rage I've been holding back. For everyone asking why my sister is at a motel instead of staying with our parents, the answer's simple: she can't go to them. She's never had a good relationship with them and they're always clashing. They fight all the time. And you know for sure if they find out about her pregnancy, they'll have a lot of questions. They'd destroy her the moment they find out she had an affair with my husband. She knows that as well as I do, which is why she's hiding out in a motel. Update 2. It's past midnight, and my husband finally came home a while ago. He was a little drunk. I suppose he must have been drinking to work up the courage to face me, or maybe to numb the guilt. Either way, he didn't need to say a word. The moment he saw my face, he knew I already knew what he'd done. He stumbled toward the couch, his whole body slumped, and then to my disbelief, he started crying. Between sobs, he confessed he knew I was going to hate him forever for what he'd done, and that he wished he could go back in time and undo everything. I told him my sister was pregnant and would have his child soon, also that I expected him to serve me divorce papers. Hearing this, he frantically shook his head, his eyes wide with desperation. He knelt in front of me, begging, saying that he never wanted to leave me. He swore my sister had been pressuring him to divorce me, pushing him to be with her, but he didn't want that. Then he said he could just pay child support and still live with me. He looked at me, waiting for an answer. But all I could feel was rage. Not only was he a coward for cheating on me, but he didn't even want to take responsibility for his unborn child's sake. He confessed that what he had with my sister was only physical, that it never meant anything to him. He said that as if reducing his affair to something meaningless was going to hurt me less. I pointed out that my sister clearly thought otherwise, that she believed they were in love. But he immediately shook his head, dismissing the idea right away. He insisted he could never love my sister. He said, "Oh, please, she's lonely and desperate, she'd sleep with anyone. I could never love a woman like that, let alone raise a baby with her." This was the same man my sister believed would protect her and the baby. The same man she was so sure would leave me to start a new life with her. And here he was, speaking about her with nothing but disgust. Something he didn't have for sleeping with her. He continued, "If she wants to have the kid, let her, but I don't want anything to do with it. If it were up to me, I'd never let her go through with the pregnancy. This whole thing has been a huge mistake." He kept repeating over and over how much he loved me, how he couldn't imagine life without me, and didn't want my sister to destroy our relationship. He pleaded for my forgiveness, practically groveling at my feet, but I refused to say a word. I didn't have anything to say anymore. Now, as I'm writing this, my husband is sleeping who knows where. Sleeping off his drunkenness. I've kicked him out of our house because I can't stand to be near him. I need to sleep, my mind is exhausted. I've written a lot of posts, and it's time to calm down a little. Tomorrow, I'll think about my next steps with a clearer mind. Update 3. First and foremost, I exposed my sister and husband's affair to everyone. I got my sister to come over, telling her we needed to talk face to face, with my husband present as well. They both assumed it would just be the three of us. They didn't know I had already told my parents everything, and they were furious. The moment my sister walked through the door, my parents came in right behind her, ready to tear into both her and my husband. My husband arrived a few minutes later. When my sister saw our parents walk into the house, all the color drained from her face. She looked terrified. Good. My dad wasted no time. He quickly approached her and screamed in her face. He called her a whore and demanded to know how she could betray her own sister like that. He made it clear that her child would never be accepted into our family, and that she wouldn't be either. My sister just stood there, stunned, unable to defend herself. My mom walked up to my husband and slapped him hard across the face. She then started letting loose, calling him every name under the sun, cursing him out for destroying our marriage, for humiliating me, for betraying everything we'd built together. In that moment, it felt so good. It was like coming home and having your mom waiting for you with hot chocolate and a pie fresh out of the oven. Only now they were putting the two biggest idiots I had met in their place. That's how comforting it was. My sister tried desperately to convince my parents that she and my husband were in love and that he wanted to be with her, not me. It was all a fantasy where they were meant to be together, and insisted I was the one standing in the way of their supposed happiness. Without saying a word, I pulled out my phone and played a recording, one my husband didn't know existed. What he didn't know was that the night he came home drunk and guilt-ridden and confessed everything to me, I'd recorded it all. The recording had him saying that my sister's pregnancy was a mistake, that he didn't want anything to do with her or the baby. Her husband called her desperate and said that he could never love a woman like her, a woman so easy to take to bed. I was waiting if he mentioned it, but I figured he wanted a second option in my sister and was ready to ruin it. I wasn't going to miss out on further embarrassing my sister either. Because she had already embarrassed herself, though she didn't know it yet. But now, it was shattered, burned and ready to be thrown out. My dad turned back to my sister again, demanding whether she still wanted to claim this was true love. My mom looked disgusted, shaking her head at both of them. At that point, it was all over for them. I looked my sister straight in the eyes and told her the hard truth. She was nothing more than a body my husband had used. That didn't mean he actually loved her, and it certainly didn't mean he was going to take responsibility for her child. But still, I congratulated her. Congratulations on ruining your life for a man who doesn't even want you or your child. Good luck when they take your child away from you again, because it's gonna happen, since you won't have anyone's help. You won't have your lover's help, you won't have your parents' help, and you won't have the sister's help that you betrayed. You don't even have the intelligence to help yourself. Sure, she and my husband could have their kid, but knowing him, and how cowardly he was, he'd never really own up to her or the baby publicly. Not only did he not love her, but his family was deeply religious. Infidelities were unforgivable, and children born from infidelities were considered even worse. His family prided themselves on their values and principles, and I knew for a fact they'd be disgusted when they found out what their perfect son had done. And to make sure they knew everything, I had already sent them an email, with the recording attached. Now there was no way he could lie. At that point, my sister completely broke down. She sobbed uncontrollably like they had kicked her butt on the playground. And in a way, they had. I had assembled an expert team of ass kickers for her and my husband. My husband, for his part, just stood there, looking ashamed, and that's when I pulled out the divorce papers and handed them to him. I had waited for his, but he didn't even have the courage for that. I informed him we were done, that I never wanted to see his face again, and that all contact would be through lawyers. My husband immediately panicked and started apologizing over and over, on his knees in front of me begging for forgiveness. But my dad glared at him, and besides mocking his manhood, he picked him up from one man and escorted him to the door, much less gently than I'm describing it. My sister received a pretty similar treatment, but less violent. Though it was my mother who got her out of there, Not that magically all of this that I planned was enough and now I feel much better, but at least I've pulled the band-aid off my wound. And even though it hurts, it's best to do it soon and not prolong this any further. I have a lot to go through now, but it's a start. And it's not a bad start, because watching them cry, plead, and lower themselves like this helps. I don't know if I'll do another update, it all depends on what you guys want. For me, my story is over, because the people who were hurting me are gone. Edit. For those asking why my parents weren't on the best terms with my sister, it has to do with them not approving of her adopting against her husband's will. Still, they weren't the ones who cut off the relationship, but my sister was the one who started a battle with them. In the end they got tired and put her aside. Update 4. I'm only doing this update for you guys, because you've asked for it. And as a thank you for supporting me through my posts, which were intense. Yes, I'm divorced now. That's huge news for me because even though I'd kicked him out of my house, or rather my parents' house because they bought it, I wanted the paper that made it official. That's a big plus. No, my sister and ex-husband have not ended up together, not even by judge's obligation. My ex doesn't have to pay child support because he won't be a father anymore. My sister lost it, and I think something inside her doesn't want her to be a mother. There's really something wrong with the way she is, so the universe wants to prevent her from bringing a child into the world. I don't think the universe is wrong. My ex also had a part of the universe showing him what he deserves when his family found out. Family that called me almost in its entirety to tell me how sorry they were. I know I've said that they are conservative and religious, but I have an obligation to mention that they have also been the most common sense people on my ex's side. Because my ex, well, you already know. I think it's only fair that both families are cutting both of them off, they deserve that and a bit more too. But my work here is done, and I think the universe still has more in store for them. With how unintelligent my sister is and how playful my ex's thing between his legs is, I think sooner or later something will happen. I'd like to check back in 20 years and give you guys a rundown of that. I hope I remember by then.